Hey Pathways Church, it's TJ Norman here with your daily dose. And today we're continuing our journey through the good news of Mark, and we're going to dive into Mark chapter 2, 6 and 7. Now, some teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? In these verses, we find Jesus is in a house filled with people teaching and healing. Among the crowd of some of the teachers of the law, the religious leaders of the day, when Jesus tells the paralytic that his sins are forgiven, these leaders are taken aback. They immediately think to themselves, who does this fellow think he is? He's blaspheming. Only God can forgive us. The teachers of the law were right about one thing, and only God can forgive us. And this brings up an important aspect of Jesus' ministry, his authority to forgive sins. And when we talk about sins and forgiveness, the truth is that there is such a thing as human forgiveness, and Jesus called us to forgive one another, even 70 times 7. And when I was a kid there, we were taught that sin 7 times 70 and then turn the other cheek when other kids did the same thing that were just as bad. And we oftentimes will count the times that someone does something against us. And sometimes we have a childish view of Jesus' words and not realizing that 70 times 7 was his way of describing the infinity of forgiveness. If the Lord tells us to forgive one another 70 times 7, don't you think he does the same and even more? Ultimately, the forgiveness of all sin, even the sins we commit against one another, belongs to God. After his affair with Bathsheba and the murder of her husband Uriah, David admitted in Psalms chapter 51, against you only have I sinned. Hadn't he sinned against them as well? All sin ultimately is a sin against God. Sin involves falling short of God's will, stepping across the line, his commandment, or intentionally rebelling against God. David knew he had failed in all these respects. The forgiveness of another is like erasing a chalkboard. The smudge of tracer effects remain, and it takes that wet sponge to wipe the slate clean. And that's God's forgiveness that he does for us. Jesus knew all of that, and so did the teachers of the law. Only God can forgive. So as we go out today, remember to ask for forgiveness from those around us, but also asking God to cleanse us as well. And that's all for today's Daily Dose. Join me again next time as we continue our journey through the good news of Mark. Have a blessed week.